like to see Mr. Anthony Fulmer. Is he expecting you?
Yes, he is.
308.
Which direction?
Down the hall.
Yep. When he called, he just said that he was at this hotel and wanted to see me.
That's it?
That's it.
To tell you the truth, I had trouble getting that much out of him. He just sort of ran out of words.
When Della called, there was no answer.
Maybe he went out to get something to eat or something.
Or something.
Breaking and entering?
Yep.
Nope. Mr. Fulmer? I'll call the paramedics.
Don't bother. Call the morgue.
Now, it is my distinct pleasure to open the initial session of this conference by first introducing 4 of the brightest stars in the mystery novel firmament. First, I'd like you to meet the creator of that delicious librarian sleuth, Edwina Crutchfield, the brilliant Martha Robertson.
I've known Martha for years. Don't you just love her books?
Nah.
And
Oh, I
now,
do.
the man who's made Cruz Suarez a household name, one of the first writers to have created a Latino detective with mass popular appeal, Mr. Michael Garcia.
Now, he's good.
Oh, it's too violent.
Everybody's favorite ex-policeman and the logical successor to Hamilton Chandler, the one and only Max Mulgrew.
I used to read all his books.
Not me.
You're a woman.
The young lady who's added a dash of spice to the mystery novel recipe. Miss Rita Sue Bliss.
Her books are practically pornographic.
How would you know?
Now, our
I've read every
subject
one
this
of them.
afternoon, as you know, is the true crime story. And the example we'll be using is the current bestseller, A Passionate Death. A Passionate Death, based on the notorious Blaisdell murder case. And now I am pleased to present the man who later this evening will be presented with our annual Wilkie Award for Lifetime Achievement, the author of A Passionate Death, Mr. Bradley Thompson.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Before we take questions, I thought I'd share with you some of the difficulties of transferring a real crime to the pages of a book. And naturally, one can't just set down what could be a tedious transcription of the trial, and on the other hand, one mustn't distort the truth. In fact, the prime obligation of the writer is to strictly adhere to the actual facts of the case.
Unbelievable.
You have a problem with that, mister? Mr. Melansky, is it?
No, please. Go right ahead.
Mr. Melansky, if you have any objection to what I've said, I think we'd all like to hear it.
I don't really think this is the time or the place.
You have read my book, Mr. Melansky?
Every word.
Yes, I'm not surprised, since it was your employer who convinced the jury that his client, Angela Blaisdell, was innocent of the murders.
She was innocent.
As I say in my book.
That's not all you said.
I should hope not, or it wouldn't have sold 200,000 copies in the first month. Now, please, tell us. What's on your mind?
All right. You were just talking about the writer's responsibility to adhere to the truth. Why didn't you do that in A Passionate Death?
You didn't like my book, did you, Mr. Molansky?
No, I hated it.
That's a bit harsh, isn't it?
I don't think so. Allow me to refresh your recollection.
Oh, I'm sorry, son. I didn't realize we were back in the courtroom.
Angela Blaisdell was accused of murdering her millionaire husband, Jack, and his married lover, Helen Fulmer. Perry Mason was able to prove that 3 other people had as much motive and opportunity to kill the victims as had Angela Blaisdell. The basis of Mr. Mason's defense was that there was reasonable doubt as to the guilt of the defendant, Angela Blaisdell.
I covered that in the book.
In your book, Mr. Thompson, you left no doubt that the killer was Anthony Fulmer, the husband of the murdered woman.
A writer must bring his own point of view to everything he writes.
And just what is your point of view about Anthony Fulmer's suicide 4 months ago?
You seem to forget, Miss Street, that it was your very own Perry Mason who originally raised the possibility of Anthony Fulmer's guilt.
He established that someone other than Angela Blaisdell could have committed those crimes.
That's right. Mr. Mason never accused Fulmer, but you did. You tried and convicted him in your book.
Have you never heard of artistic license, Mr. Molansky?
Have you ever heard of professional or moral responsibility, Mr. Thompson?
I think we've gotten a little off track here. I really thought we were going to be discussing somewhat more generalized subjects.
I've said all I have to say. But if this were a courtroom, I would now move for a directed verdict of guilty.
Well, I say let's do it. Let's vote. All in favor of guilty?
Hold it. Miss Street, Mr. Molansky, have you met everyone yet?
Not yet, but there's no hurry.
Oh, nonsense. This is a party. Everybody should know everybody. Rebecca. This is Miss Della Street, Mr. Kenneth Molansky, Rebecca Austin.
Miss Austin?
Miss Street, Mr. Molansky.
Are you also a writer, Miss Austin?
Well, I'm trying to be. Right now, I work for Brad Thompson.
Look, I know how it must have sounded this afternoon, but we happen to feel very strongly
I'm sure that we all feel very strongly about certain things, Mr. Molansky, but that doesn't give us the right to resort to personal attacks. Now, if you'll excuse me.
We're the hit of the party.
Della. Oh, Martha. I know this isn't the place, but sometime this weekend we've got to catch up.
Absolutely, dear. Ken, this is Martha Robinson, my dear friend, Ken Molansky.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
I have to thank you both for this afternoon's entertainment. I can't remember when I had a better time.
I take it you're not a big Brad Thompson fan either.
Well, you know how with some people you have to get to know them to really like them? Well, I think with Brad, you have to have been married to him to hate him.
You were married to Brad Thompson?
Yes, 7 years, 46 days, and 3 hours.
Yeah? Well, I'd rather be a has-been than a thief like you.
Max, have you any idea what an embarrassment you are?
You rotten, miserable phony.
It's the first time I've ever known you willingly give up your booze.
Oh, come here. Take it easy. Come on, Max. Take it easy.
All right.
Thank you, Mike.
Forget it. I should have let him knock your brains out.
Are you all right?
Not so bad, though I never did acquire a taste for scotch.
I'll go get you a towel.
And another margarita, please, love.
Now I'm really having a good time.
I'll have another one, sweet pea. Not too elegant, Max, but still effective.
Excuse me. I have to compliment Max on his aim. I like your style and you're a damn good shot.
Give me a double.
Look up and smile.
I think I'll freshen up before dinner.
You look fresh to me.
Later.
Bradley, darling, I just wanted to tell you that I thought you handled yourself with a lot of class just then. If a man threw a drink in my face, he'd end up walking funny for a whole month.
I'm overwhelmed. That's the nicest thing you've said to me in years.
That's the only thing I've said to you in years.
Excuse me, I forgot my purse. Oh!
Anti-wrinkle cream. Good luck.
And people always say such nasty things about you. For the life of me, I can't understand why.
Is everything all right here?
Why wouldn't it be? Here I am, surrounded by my closest friends. What could be more pleasant?
Let's get out of here.
Well, are we having fun yet?
And, as you are all aware, our Wilkie Award for Lifetime Achievement is named after Wilkie Collins, the famous 19th century English novelist who is credited with inventing the modern mystery novel. So, what could be more appropriate than presenting this year's award to the versatile Renaissance man who practically reinvented the form? No one has created so many different detectives and investigators and has written in so many different but always brilliant styles. I am honored to present this year's award to Mr. Bradley Thompson.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Jason spoke about my so-called versatility. Well, I think that I would have died of boredom if I had to keep writing about the same detective over and over again. I think that the one thing that kept me going is always setting myself new.
Is there a doctor here? Sorry. I'm afraid he's dead.
But to continue, ladies and gentlemen, I realize this is a very late hour, but there again, this is a very serious matter. Contrary to what you all may believe, Mr. Thompson did not die of a heart attack or, in fact, from any natural cause. Mr. Thompson, I am sad to say, was poisoned to death.
Are you certain?
Ma'am, the coroner's report, which I received just about a half an hour ago, said that Mr. Thompson ingested enough of the poison chlorobenzate to kill an entire team of horses.
Lieutenant, something tells me you haven't gathered us all together because we are the next of kin.
Well, I should hope not, sir. You see, the report said that the poison was administered sometime today between the hours of 4:30 and 6 p.m. And from what the coroner is able to tell from his examination of the body, the poison was contained in a drink made with tequila, possibly a margarita.
Maybe we all got lucky and he poisoned himself.
Possibly. But we also found that Mr. Thompson's room had been ransacked after he died. No, sir. He couldn't do that himself.
Lieutenant, with all due respect, you understand. Just why have we all been gathered here in the middle of the night for this late-breaking news bulletin?
Well, ma'am, I should think that rather obvious. I mean, the poison was given to Mr. Thompson sometime during the cocktail party just the night of you attended earlier today. So with all due respect to you, that would seem to make each and every one of you a murder suspect.
Oh, but surely you don't mean all of us.
Oh, but I do, sir. Mr. Tweed, I am not known for saying anything I don't mean, and I mean one of you killed Bradley Thompson, and I'm asking all of you to stay in town until I can find out which one of you did it.
Mr. Mason, did you bring Molansky here to cause trouble for Brad Thompson?
Brad Thompson makes his own trouble.
Will you be representing Molansky and Street yourself?
They've been arrested?
Well, they have been identified as suspects.
Well, if they need representation, I'm available. See you in court.
Just what is your position?
I'll see you in court.
How does it feel having your two associates suspects in a murder case, Mr. Mason?
Oh, in court.
Mr. Mason, one more question.
The most frustrating part of the whole business is we must have been in the room when the murder was committed. And I have no idea who could have done it. And I should have.
And it was just the 9 of you there?
Including the bartender.
The police honestly consider the 2 of you to be suspects?
I guess you heard about our little debate.
The whole world heard.
I guess I did get a little carried away.
Well, so did I.
I heard about that, too.
It was Brad Thompson that provoked it.
Anyhow, Brock figures that gives us motive.
Uh-huh. It's Brock again.
And here are the names of everyone that was at the party.
And believe me, most of them weren't great Brad Thompson admirers either.
4 of them fairly well-known writers. Easy to look into. There's Martha Robertson. Friend of yours, isn't she?
Yes. And I like her.
I know you like her. Otherwise, you wouldn't be friends.
What do you want me to do?
The bartender.
His name's Chris Hobson.
Yeah, well, talk to him. Considering Thompson's drink was poisoned, he's not a bad place to start.
You want me to sample the drinks?
Last one's on me.
Anyhow, like I was saying, I was working in Chicago, a place called Danny's. You ever heard of it? Well, it's this bar and grill on the north side. But then about a month and a half ago, I get mugged by a couple of teenagers. That's the 3rd time in 6 months. Well, I decided right then and there I wasn't going to spend another day in Chicago. I just needed a change of scenery.
So you wound up here?
Yeah. And now I find myself mixed up in a murder investigation. I don't know, maybe it's just my line of work, not the geography.
And you didn't notice anything out of the ordinary at the party?
No. It's like I told that cop. And believe me, I went over the whole thing in my mind. I mean, I knew they'd be asking me about it.
Is it possible that there's some odd little detail that you ignored at the time?
No. I mean, the only odd thing was that for a party, nobody seemed to be having a very good time. You included.
In other words, you didn't see anybody slip anything into Brad Thompson's drink?
No. No, I think I might have remembered that.
What happened to the bottles and the glasses from the party?
Oh, the police have them. I don't think they found anything in any of the bottles, though. I mean, if they did, I'd probably be under arrest by now.
Hey, kid. Hit me again.
Thanks for your time, Chris.
Yeah, no problem.
Maximo Gru's career's been on a downhill slope for the last 5 or 10 years. I don't even think he's had a book out since '85.
You follow his career?
No, but he's sort of a media personality. He does a lot of talk shows, commercials, stuff like that.
Harry, I've been trying to find you. Martha Robinson wants to see you right away.
Why is Martha Robinson under arrest? I will tell you why she's under arrest. We found this hidden in her hotel room.
Forensics says it has the same poison in it that killed Thompson. We also found traces of the poison in Martha Robertson's purse. We have a glass with residue of the poison in it. Now, to make matters really interesting, one of the secretaries at the county building said Miss Robertson used that same identical poison in one of her books.
What does she have to say?
Nothing, just that she wanted to talk to you.
I would very much like to talk to her. Anytime in the near future.
Be my guest. But Mr. Mason, before you go charging off taking a case, I think there's something else you might want to know. The lab identified 3 sets of fingerprints on that glass that I spoke of. The bartender's, the deceased, and Martha Robertson's.
Mr. Mason, I didn't kill Brad Thompson. I'd like you to help me prove it. I understand you're about the best there is. Della certainly thinks so.
I'm afraid I'll have to know a little more.
Anything.
The poison they found in your room and in your purse.
I don't know anything about it. I don't know how it got in my room. I don't know how it got in my purse.
But you'd written about that particular poison in your book.
Mr. Mason, I use poisons a lot in my books. All kinds of poisons. Somehow it seems cleaner to me than shooting holes in people. But I get all that information from my research. I wouldn't know how to actually go out and obtain any poison for myself, even if I wanted to.
What about your fingerprints on the glass?
The only thing that I can think of is that as I was leaving, I spilled the contents of my purse, and when I bent over to pick everything up, I bumped the table, and I had to catch Brad's glass in order to keep it from tipping over.
You were very outspoken about how much you disliked him.
Well, so was Della. And your Mr. Molansky.
But poison wasn't found in their rooms.
Mr. Mason, I'm not the kind of person who frightens easily, but right now I'm scared to death. You see, I had a rather strong motive to kill Brad. Did you know we were married for 7 years?
46 days and 3 hours. Mr. Molansky has a very good memory.
Oh. 1 gin and tonic, and I talked my fool head off. Anyhow, during our marriage, I did most of the writing on the books Brad first had published. Somehow he convinced me it was better that they come out under his name. Finally, after a lot of, as he said, nagging on my part, he agreed to start giving me co-authorship credit. And then he reneged. We wound up in a very ugly divorce. It wasn't a community property state, so I didn't even get any money for the books I'd actually written. And 2 had been sold to the movies. So you see, I had a lot of reasons to hate him. But I did not kill him. Please help me.
All right, Miss Robertson. But I warn you, it's going to be an uphill battle.
Well, if you lose the case, there is a bright side. If I'm found guilty, at least Della and Mr. Molansky will be off the suspect list.
So what time's your next rendezvous?
Oh, Michael, you are being ridiculous.
I'm ridiculous. You were strutting around the pool practically naked, batting your eyes at every man under 85. Why don't you just hand out cards with your room number printed on them? Now that would be a big mistake.
I don't mean to intrude. I wonder if you could spare me a bit of your time.
Well, it would be my pleasure, Mr. Mason.
Martha Robertson's been charged with Thompson's murder.
And you're going to be her attorney, right? Well, thank goodness for that.
I just wondered if you saw something at that cocktail party that might help in her defense.
I'm not sure I know what you mean.
Well, she spilled her purse. Would she have had time or the opportunity to have dropped something into Thompson's drink?
Gee, I'm not sure I can help you with that. See, I was bent down helping Martha pick up her things, so I'm not sure I know where anybody was just then.
I understand that you and Brad were once quite close.
Well, we had a little thing going for a while, if that's what you mean.
5 years ago?
Yes. Well, I was just starting out then, and Bradley suggested that we collaborate on a book together. Well, you can imagine, I thought the idea was just too thrilling for words. Unfortunately, I ended up writing the whole book myself.
But he refused to send it to his publisher.
Yes. He said that it was too dirty. I tried to explain to him that sex sells, but he refused to listen, so that was the name of that tune. End of romance. I tell you, for a man with no compunctions whatsoever about stealing other people's work, he sure drew funny moral lines.
But he didn't steal your work.
Oh, no. I wasn't talking about that. I meant A Passionate Death. You know, the book your Mr. Molansky likes so much.
You actually wrote that book?
No, but I sure as hell was going to. I sat in on that trial for months. I interviewed just about everybody, took notes till my pretty little hand almost fell off. Unfortunately, I made the mistake of sending copies of my research to my publishing company.
Which also happened to be Brad's publishing company.
And one of the editors there sent it on to Brad, and so before I could finish my book, A Passionate Death was already a bestseller.
Why didn't you take legal action?
Well, my attorney said that the Blaisdell trial was a matter of public record, and I'd probably wind up losing a lawsuit. So the best thing I could do was change publishers. But what difference does it make anyway? I'm still on the smiling side of 40. I got a good career. There's a great man in my life. I guess you could say I sort of have it all.
Doesn't having it all usually mean having a family?
Well, I might even consider that if I ever meet a man I can't intimidate. Why do you ask, Mr. Mason? You applying for the job?
I'll let you know.
Well, I'll be waiting.
It's simply awful. I mean, canceling the conference means we have to make refunds to everybody. But the hotel is insisting we still pay for the rooms. And even worse, this murder is going to totally destroy our reputation. I doubt we'll even have another conference.
Well, it was a bad week for Brad Thompson, too.
Oh, I can't tell you how badly I feel about that. I thought I was doing such a clever thing by inviting those people. And here I may even be indirectly responsible for his death.
Oh, believe me, Mr. Tweed, whoever killed Brad Thompson didn't need your invitation.
Well, that's kind of you to say, Mr. Mason. And I won't keep you any longer. Ah, Miss Street.
Mr. Tweed? You think he did it? Well, I mean, he always looks guilty about something.
Della, I don't think he did it. Ken.
I know. Talk to that bartender again, find out what everybody was drinking.
And?
How much? I'm on my way.
This is some more information about our little group of suspects. Colorful group, aren't they? Including Martha, I am very sorry to say.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I'd say that's one of the reasons you became friends. She's so colorful. You read these. Here.
He never stole from anybody. Anybody who said he did. He's just being jealous and vindictive.
How long did you know him?
2 years. I'd been a creative writing student, and he'd spoken at our college a couple of times. He'd been kind enough to read a couple of stories that I'd had published in a fairly obscure literary magazine. Anyhow, I guess he liked them because he promised to teach me to be a novelist in exchange for being his research assistant.
And you accepted?
Of course. I even did a lot of work on A Passionate Death, as a matter of fact.
You mean you wrote it?
No.
But he had all the material for the book, didn't he?
Yes, but that...
So you just put all of it together into a kind of narrative.
But that doesn't mean
It means you actually wrote the book.
But he'd already done all the research on it.
Didn't it bother you that you really wrote that book and he got all the glory and all the royalties?
No, of course not. Anyhow, Brad had promised that on the next book we would share the writing credits. And he would have done it. I know he would have.
Tell me, Rebecca, A Passionate Death came out well over 6 months ago, and that means it had to be delivered to the publisher at least 6 months before that. What had Brad been doing the last year?
Writing his autobiography.
With your help?
No. He was writing it by himself. I never saw any of it.
Miss Austin, where's the manuscript of Brad's autobiography?
In my room. Brad felt it would be safer to keep it there.
Oh, you scared me.
You scared us. You think I might read that manuscript? There could be something in there that might help Martha.
Actually, Brad's literary executor has first claim to it, and I'm sure they wouldn't want anybody else reading it before they had an opportunity to.
Perry.
Who is the literary executor?
I am.
Excuse me, Perry. Martha's publisher put up her bail, but before you talk to her, you better read this.
Have you read it?
Well,
Looking for Chris? Packed up and took off a couple hours ago.
Took off? Where?
Said he got a better offer from another hotel. Said he only have to work days. I told him he was nuts. A bartender gets twice the money working nights.
Did he say what hotel? You know where Chris is from?
Midwest somewhere, I think.
Chicago?
Maybe. But he used to root for the Cards. Said he missed going out to Busch Stadium.
Thanks a lot.
Sure.
All right, yes, I did threaten to kill him.
Do you mind if I record this? Now, you threatened to kill him in front of witnesses. Lawyers.
Let me explain. As part of our divorce settlement 18 years ago, Brad and I agreed to hold on to a piece of property in California as tenants in common. As far as I knew, it was more or less desert wasteland. And except for paying my share of the taxes, I didn't give it another thought. And then about 6 months ago, Brad contacted me and said that he wanted to donate the land to the state as a wildlife refuge.
So you signed over your half.
And then about 2 weeks later, I found out he had sold the entire piece of property to a real estate developer for a very large shopping mall. I hired a lawyer. We all had a meeting, and I'm afraid I lost my temper. I said something about Brad being an endangered species, and that I personally was going to make him extinct. I know it wasn't very bright of me.
No, it wasn't. What else haven't you told me?
Nothing. I swear, nothing.
The poison they found in your room. Could somebody have put it there before the party?
I don't know. After Della and Mr. Melansky had their sparring match with Brad, I went up to my room and spent the rest of the day working on my new book. And then I started to get... Wait a minute. Around 5 o'clock, I called room service for some mineral water. But when it came, I was in the shower. Somebody called out room service. I called back, leave it on the table, and when I got out, there it was, right next to my purse.
Room service. We'll look into it.
Look into everyone, please. Brad Thompson used everybody. It was the story of his life.
Could be the story of his death.
Sorry to interrupt. Chris Hobson skipped out a couple of hours ago. I checked on what he told me about Chicago, said he tended bar at a place called Danny's. I talked to the union there, and they have no record of a Chris Hobson, and there is no bar called Danny's.
Do you think he could be the murderer?
I think he knows more than he's told us. A lot more. I'm sure Lieutenant Brock made it very clear that he was to stay here. Right here.
Open the door.
I already told Lieutenant Brock I don't know whether it was a man or a woman.
But they did steal the manuscript. Well, they took a pretty big risk breaking in while you were here.
It's their only chance, I guess. I've hardly left this room since Brad died.
Rebecca, what could have been in that manuscript?
Someone once hidden. Maybe that's why he was killed in the first place.
Whoever killed him is in for a big surprise.
What do you mean?
Well, yesterday after you left, I sat down and I read the manuscript. I'm afraid Bradley had only written a couple of chapters and it only took him as far as high school.
Funny. He couldn't seem to write one thing himself. Not even his own life story. Tell me, who knew that Brad was writing that autobiography?
He was pretty much keeping it a secret. But he did an interview with a writer from Detective Digest, and he told him.
Do you have a copy of the magazine?
No. But it should be out on the stands either today or tomorrow. He also told him about the book that he and I were supposed to be writing, and I'm sorry, I just don't know what to do.
Look, Ken and I disagree with the ethics of a passionate death, but it was brilliantly written. And it was your writing. Your future will soon start taking care of itself, young lady. It'll do that much sooner if you just get some rest.
Thank you, Mr. Mason.
I'll buy.
Good. Straight soda, no ice.
Sounds good.
Ken, we have to find Chris Hobson.
You didn't say it was Chris who broke in?
He holds the key to this whole case, and I mean that literally.
You mean whoever planted the poison in Martha's room actually had key access?
And whoever was in Rebecca's room.
The personnel manager told me that when Chris Hobson first started working here, they had plenty of bartenders, so they put him on room service for a week.
So, he must have been issued a pass key.
I also found out he volunteered to tend bar at the cocktail party.
Just find him. Get him back here.
St. Louis. He was a big Cardinal fan. He even used to go out to the park.
Hobson's probably not his real name.
I'll take some of the pictures that Jason Tweed took at the party. He must be in one of them. Then I guess I'll just have to start bar hopping.
St. Louis. Why does that ring a bell?
Well, it's a fairly well-known city in the Midwest.
Of course it is.
I'll leave first thing in the morning.
No, tonight. You'd better leave tonight.
Of course he stole from me. Why should I be different from everybody else?
You old buddies. MP's in Korea, wasn't it?
Yeah. When I got out, I joined the force in Frisco and Brad started writing. Then, when his books started coming out, I figured, damn, if he can do it, why can't I? You know how it is. It took a hell of a long time, but eventually I quit the force and I gave it a shot.
So you went to your old friend for some advice.
Yeah. I told him about some of my cases and he got real excited. He said we should collaborate on my first one, you know, kind of like an apprenticeship or something. Of course, I ended up writing the whole thing. Anyway, Brad sent it to his publisher and it came out. With his name on it.
Murder on Mission Street.
Right. And not a word about Max Mulgrew. Not even in the acknowledgments. So we had this big fight, and I mean real fight, and I nailed that sucker good.
You must have had some very hard feelings. Do you still?
Oh, look. Look, if I wanted to kill Brad, and I've wanted to, believe me, I'd have shot the creeper, maybe beaten him to death, but poison? Hell. That's not my style.
Max, where were you last night about 11 o'clock?
Why?
That's when someone broke into Rebecca Austin's room.
I was alone. In my room. Curled up with a good bottle. Unfortunately, that's all.
Still meddling, Mason? I wonder when you'd get around to me.
You were a protege of Brad Thompson's.
That's a fair description.
Tell me about it.
Sure. Well, let's see. Well, after I got out of the Army, I wrote a book about Nam. Heroes Without Valor. You ever hear it?
Sorry.
Well, why should you? It sold under 2,000 copies. Anyway, my publisher told me that maybe Vietnam wasn't too commercial anymore, and that I should try to write about something else.
Like a detective story with a Vietnam vet as the hero.
Anyway, he sent me to Brad. Said Brad was very good with young writers and a great teacher. I told Brad the premise of my book. He seemed to like it very much. I'd send him chapters, right? Then he'd send me back these notes. Well, it took me about a year to finish it. And by that time, my wife and I, we were just flat broke. So then when Brad read the final version, he offered me a big, fat $10,000 for all the rights to it.
You didn't take the money.
I told him to take that $10,000 and stick it in his ear. And eventually, I did find myself a better publisher. And the rest is trivial history.
They say that Thompson's genius was that he wrote in many different styles. But he wasn't a genius, was he? He was a prod.
Maybe. But I'll tell you something. He was a good teacher. Man, I learned a lot from him.
When did you learn that all the time you were writing the book, Brad was carrying on an affair with your wife?
You're good, Mason. You know that? No, I mean, you're really very good. What does that have to do with anything?
That has been considered a very good motive for murder.
That's old news, Mason. Me and my wife, we've been divorced for over 2 years now. You don't know me so good, you know? I just don't go around killing people.
What about 11 o'clock last night?
You think I broke into that girl's room and slugged her? Well, I didn't. I didn't poison anybody either. 11 o'clock last night? I was watching the late news on TV.
Alone?
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Garcia.
Oh, by the way, speaking about poison, I just want to save you some time. I was a chemistry major in college.
I know.
Well, looky who's here, Mr. Mason. What have you been doing? Giving poor little Michael the 3rd degree? I hope you haven't put him in a bad mood for our picnic. By the way, I told you he'd be back now, didn't I?
You mind telling me where you were at 11 o'clock last night?
Well, didn't Michael tell you?
He said he was alone, watching the TV news.
Oh, how very gallant. I just knew I could make a gentleman out of him. You ready for some home cooking, darling?
You drive.
Gladly.
Can I help you? I hope so. It's the 19th bar I've been to today. I'm looking for this guy.
Never saw him before.
You're sure?
What do you want with him?
He's a material witness to a murder trial in Colorado.
You're gonna tell me everything you know about that guy, or you're gonna face charges as an accessory after the fact in a murder case.
They all had reason to hate Thompson. They all had a chance to poison his drink. But I'm not sure their motives are strong enough.
He stole from all of them.
Why wait until now to get even? No, I'll bet it has to do with what somebody thought was in that autobiography. That reminds me, I need the latest issue of Detective Digest. Hello? Well.
I'm at a place called Mobby's Bar. Chris Hobson's been working here for the last 3 years. He just got away from me, but don't worry, I got a lead. The location on his sister, I'm told they're very close.
Good work.
There's one more thing. His real name isn't Hobson. It's Fulmer. Chris Fulmer.
Of course. Anthony Fulmer's son. That's why St. Louis rang a bell. That's where Fulmer came from. And he had 2 children.
That's the way I figured it, too. The Blaisdell case.
If we're looking for motive, Chris must have held Brad Thompson directly responsible for his father's suicide. Ken, the hearing starts tomorrow. We have to find him.
I'll sure try.
Here you go. Anything else?
Is this table okay right here?
Sure. Would you like a menu?
Oh, no, thanks, Judy.
Do I know you?
Well, you got that, coffee and some toast, please.
Okay.
Judy Fulmer, isn't it?
This doesn't say Fulmer.
You're right, but I'm a buddy of your brother Chris's. Just got into town. I've been trying like hell to contact him, but I've been striking out. Somebody told me you worked here and you could put me in touch.
Yeah? What's your name?
Ken Molansky.
I've never heard him mention that name. Besides, I haven't seen my brother in weeks.
Look, Judy. Chris is in big trouble. I'd like to help.
Let go of me.
He's a material witness in a murder case. I have to talk to him.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think you do. And I think you know where he is.
I told you I haven't seen Chris.
You probably think you're protecting him, but you're not. If Chris hasn't done anything wrong, the smartest thing he can do is turn himself in.
Do you think he killed somebody?
No. I've talked to your brother. I don't think he's the killer type.
Then why don't you get out of here and leave me alone?
Because I'm involved in defending the woman who's accused of the murder. I think his testimony could help her. Judy. I'm not leaving town until I talk to him. Excuse me, what happened to my waitress?
Hey, what about the toast?
This is the glassine envelope which was discovered by me in the defendant's room.
Now, Lieutenant, that purse which is marked People's Exhibit number 8, can you identify it, please?
Yes, this is the defendant's handbag, which had contained her wallet and identification, which was recovered by me at the same time as the envelope, sir.
And did you turn those items over to your Sergeant Chang of your forensic department?
Yes, I did.
And you had a conversation with Sergeant Chang subsequently, right?
Yes, I did.
Now, for purposes of probable cause only, what did he say?
He said that the powder in the envelope and the residue in the purse were the same, and that it was the poison that had been determined to have caused the victim's death.
I see. And what did you do next?
I read the defendant her rights, and I placed her under arrest for the murder of Bradley Thompson.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Your witness, Mr. Mason.
Bailiff, please leave that envelope with Lieutenant Brock. Thank you. Now, Lieutenant Brock, precisely where in the defendant's room did you find that envelope?
Well, there was a bureau to the right of the door as you entered. I found it in the second drawer under some underwear.
You went straight for the underwear, did you?
Objection, Your Honor. There's no relevancy, and if there were, it is an improper question.
Sustained. Lieutenant, although you found that envelope under her underwear, none of Miss Robertson's fingerprints were found on the envelope, were they?
Nope.
Now, you found and took custody of Miss Robertson's purse when?
The morning after Mr. Thompson's death.
In other words, more than 12 hours after the poison had to have been administered.
Well, I suppose so.
Miss Robertson, may I ask you to get your purse from the defense table?
Objection, Your Honor. Defendant has not been sworn in.
Defendant is not going to testify, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Miss Robertson, would you hand the purse to Lieutenant Brock? Now, Lieutenant, is that purse empty?
Yes, the purse is empty, Mr. Mason.
That purse, People's Exhibit 8, you identified as Miss Robertson's. Is that correct?
That is correct, and she also said that she never let it out of her sight.
Oh, it probably wouldn't have made any difference, would it?
What are you talking about?
Miss Robertson, would you bring the purse here? Now, would you hold it as you would normally? Thank you. Now, please carry it to the exhibit table. What I'm talking about, Lieutenant, is that it's an open purse. Anyone could have dropped something in it, even while she was holding it. Miss Robertson, I'd like my pen back, please. It's in the purse. Thank you.
Objection, Your Honor. This is a murder trial, not a magic show.
A visual aid, Your Honor.
Objection overruled, but no more theatrics, Counselor. All right?
Theatrics, Your Honor? Certainly not. No more theatrics. No more questions.
It's after 12. We'll recess until 1:15.
I spoke with Della this morning. She said Michael Garcia's service record should come sometime this afternoon. She also asked me to call a Detective Resnick at the San Francisco Police Department. Evidently, he knew Max Mulgrew before he quit the service. All the information is here in this folder.
Thank you. Excellent. Anything else?
Just that I was to pray that Mr. Melansky gets lucky in St. Louis.
Della thanks you. I thank you. And we'll all pray.
No, you pack up and go now. Otherwise, this Melansky will have you arrested before you know it.
Chris!
Run!
Chris! Take it easy. I just want to talk to you. Hey!
How is he?
Mr. Fulmer has a concussion and he's aspirated.
He's what?
He swallowed a lot of water.
Can I talk to him? It's very important.
The medication we've given him is taking a little bit longer than we expected to wear off. Probably not for an hour or so.
Okay. I'll be in the waiting room.
But the real reason for your divorcing your wife was her involvement with Bradley Thompson. Isn't that right?
Yes, I suppose so. I didn't kill him, Mason. I saw enough killing in Vietnam to last me a lifetime.
Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Mason is defense counsel here, not the prosecutor, and this man is a witness, not a defendant.
I'm inclined to agree, Mr. Mason. Let's move along.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Garcia, were you aware that Bradley Thompson had been working on his autobiography?
Yes.
Did you happen to read the Detective Digest interview in which he said, I quote, "You can be sure some of my friends will be distressed by the literary skeletons I intend to bring out of the closet in my book."
Oh, yes. Bradley had this wonderful flair for creating his own hype. But it didn't worry me. Hey, I got nothing to hide.
Isn't it true that part of your success rose out of the fact that you were one of the first Latino writers to have created a popular Latino detective?
Yeah. I guess so.
And wasn't Bradley Thompson one of the few people who knew your real name is Michael Garfield? That you haven't a drop of Latino blood in your body? Weren't you afraid that Thompson's revealing that fact to the world would destroy your popularity?
Mr. Mason, I figured the books were popular enough now to stand on their own. So when you get your next issue of Detective Digest, you will also find a profile on me in which I confess to that little deception.
Little deception. I already have the galley proof of the next issue. I look forward to reading the whole article. No further questions.
Mr. LaRusso.
No questions, Your Honor.
In that case, this hearing is in recess until tomorrow morning.
I'll catch up with you. Can I talk to you for a minute? Max, I warn you. If I think you're lying to me, I'll put you on the stand and you won't like it. Now, I've learned that you didn't quit the police force. You were kicked off because you ran from a firefight during which your partner was killed.
Look, Mason, that was a long time ago, but if it gets out now, I'm right down the tubes. I'm history.
Whether or not it gets out is up to you.
And maybe you don't understand. I can't get it together anymore. I haven't been able to write anything for years. Maybe it's the booze. But all I got going for me right now are those lousy talk shows and a couple of beer commercials, and that'll all stop dead if this gets out. You gotta tell me. Is that stuff in his autobiography?
Max, there really isn't any autobiography.
Oh, thank God. Look, if there's ever anything I can do for you, you just ask.
I once heard Rita Sue had another identity. What can you tell me about it?
Oh, yeah. Brad told me. Before we had our big fight, he and Rita Sue had just broken up, and he was saying a lot of nasty stuff about her in the South.
Thank you, Max.
You're not going to put me on the stand?
I hope for Martha's sake I'm making the right decision.
You're saving my life, Mason.
No, Max. You're saving your life.
Mr. Molansky, I checked on Mr. Fulmo a half an hour ago. I'm sure you can see him now. Well, you seem to be enjoying your magazine.
Thanks a lot. Chris.
Don't bother. He's been gone for 20 minutes.
Where'd he go?
You're kidding.
Look, I already told you I didn't think your brother killed anybody. But what do you think?
He couldn't kill anybody.
Are you sure?
What do you mean?
I mean, your mother was murdered, and your father committed suicide because everybody believed what was in Brad Thompson's book. That could easily send Chris over the edge, make him fixate on Thompson, hold him responsible for your father's death.
He was responsible, as much as if he'd actually pulled the trigger.
And Chris felt the same way, didn't he?
Of course he did, but that doesn't mean he did anything about it.
Maybe. But you gotta admit it looks bad. Chris suddenly shows up where Brad is gonna be, and then Brad is poisoned by a drink that Chris served him.
I asked him about all that. And he swears he didn't do it.
I think he knows who did. Look, I'll put it to you straight. If Chris doesn't come back and testify, whoever did kill Brad Thompson will probably go free. There'll be a fugitive warrant issued for Chris's arrest. He'll spend the rest of his life on the run, looking over his shoulder every inch of the way, panicking every time he sees a cop. Is that what you want for your brother? Is it? Judy. For Chris's sake. And for yours. Talk to him. I'll be at the Commodore Inn.
I don't think he did it either. But unless he comes back here, we'll never prove who did.
I know, and I'm sorry I lost him, but I got sandbagged.
What are you doing now?
Going back to the hotel and hoping like hell his sister sees the light. That he will, too. Right now, I'm not too optimistic.
Ken, call me.
All right.
Miss Street, I brought those pictures you wanted. Pictures? The pictures Mr. Molansky asked me to make copies of for Mr. Mason.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tweed.
The most amazing thing has happened. Do you remember how worried I was about next year's conference? How I thought we probably wouldn't even be able to hold one because of the scandal. Well, because of the murder. Well, our office has been flooded. I mean flooded with applications for next year. I suppose it's just morbid curiosity or something, but we are even going to have to turn people away. Can you imagine that?
No.
Oh, my Lord.
What's the matter?
You don't think anybody might possibly imagine that we arranged it somehow to get publicity or anything, do you? Oh, dear, it would be terrible if people thought it was just a publicity stunt. What is that number? I must call the press man.
Here it is.
What's that?
Right here in front of me. We had the key evidence all along.
Do you know who the murderer is?
I should have known from the moment I knew Chris Hobson was really Chris Fulmer.
Perry, that's wonderful.
Maybe. Maybe not. I have the evidence, all right. But without Fulmer's testimony, it won't do us a damn... Bit of good.
Perry. This is Chris Fulmer and his sister Judy. Perry Mason.
Martha Roberts.
How do you do?
Well, thanks for coming, both of you.
Yes, thank you.
You can thank Mr. Molansky. He convinced me, and I convinced Chris.
Ken, here are the rest of the pictures Tweed took at the party. Look them over very carefully. Chris, I'll be asking you some very tough questions.
Yeah, I figured.
It could get you into some trouble.
I know.
Very well, then.
Yes. My father was Anthony Fulmer.
The same Anthony Fulmer who committed suicide about 4 months ago.
Yes.
Would you tell the court why he committed suicide?
Objection, Your Honor. Irrelevant. Calls for conjecture.
Your Honor, I think you'll find this witness's testimony very relevant. And as you'll see, there's no conjecture.
Objection overruled. You may continue, Mr. Fulmer.
My father left a note, and he said he couldn't go on living while the whole world thought that he killed my mother.
Why did you come to Pike's Lodge a month ago and seek employment under a false name?
Because I'd read that Bradley Thompson was going to be at some conference there. And it was his book that made everybody think my father was a murderer.
What did you intend to do when you got there?
I intended... I wanted to kill him.
And did you kill Bradley Thompson?
No.
But you volunteered to tend bar at a private cocktail.
Many margaritas.
You have an excellent memory.
Tending bar is what I do for a living.
I have no more questions, but I reserve the right to recall this witness.
Mr. LaRusso.
No questions.
The witness is excused, subject to recall.
I call Rita Sue Bliss. I'll get right to the point, Miss Bliss. Is there one thing Bradley Thompson could have written in his autobiography that might have been damaging to you personally?
Well, I believe any intimate details of our relationship would only enhance my reputation.
Thank you, Miss Bliss. No further questions. But I would like to reserve the right to recall the witness.
No questions.
The witness is excused.
Defense calls Mr. Kenneth Molansky.
Yes, I was at the party from about 6:30 to 7:45 p.m.
And did you see anything odd while you were there?
Yes, I did, but it slipped my mind until my memory was jogged by looking at some of the candid snapshots that were taken at the party.
Bailiff. Mr. Molansky, could you tell the court what it was you noticed?
At the beginning of the party, Rita Sue Bliss was drinking a martini. But later on, she was talking to Brad Thompson, and I saw her holding a margarita, just as he was.
Mr. Molansky, the bailiff will show you a photograph which we will call Defense Exhibit G for identification. Can you tell us what it depicts?
This is one of the photographs taken at the party. It shows Rita Sue Bliss holding a margarita.
I move that Defense Exhibit G be admitted into evidence.
Objection, Your Honor. There's no foundation.
I'm sorry. Mr. Molansky, does that photograph accurately depict the scene at the party when you were there?
It does.
Objection overruled. The photograph will be admitted. May I see that, please?
Your Honor, the picture clearly shows Rita Sue Bliss holding a drink that resembles a margarita, not a martini. I have no further questions.
No questions, Your Honor.
The witness is excused.
Defense recalls Chris Fulmer.
I remind the witness that he's still under oath. Mr. Mason.
Mr. Fulmer, why didn't you tell us that you prepared a margarita for Rita Sue Bliss?
I don't know. I guess I forgot.
I'd like to tell you a story, sir. Now, you tell me where I get it wrong. Is that all right? A young man wants to avenge his father's death. He comes to Pike's Lodge the same day as the murder. But before the cocktail party, he's recognized by someone who's done extensive research in the Blaisdell case. Someone who'd attended the trial and who had interviewed everybody connected with it. Someone who'd even interviewed him. Someone named Rita Sue Bliss. Am I right so far?
Yes.
Speak up, please.
Yes.
Now, she guessed why you were there, didn't she? And she told you that she too wanted Bradley Thompson dead. Yes or no?
Yes.
A little louder, please.
Yes.
It was her idea to have you tend bar at the party. She procured the poison to put into Brad Thompson's drink, a drink you were supposed to serve him. Tell us what happened then. You are a young man, Mr. Fulmer. You've already had more than your share of grief. You don't want more.
She got the poison, and I put it into his drink.
And then what?
I couldn't give it to him.
Why not?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm standing there with the drink. You know, I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? I'm actually going to kill somebody, commit murder? And I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. Anyhow, I was standing there with the drink, and I guess she saw I wasn't going to give it to him.
So she took the glass herself and switched it with Brad's drink. You also saw Miss Robertson grab the glass when she almost knocked it over. If Your Honor will look at People's Exhibit G just once more, you will see why Miss Bliss's fingerprints weren't found on the glass. She was holding the glass with a paper cocktail napkin. Now, Mr. Fulmer, you gave Miss Bliss your hotel pass key. Why?
Look, she threatened my sister and me. She said I was already involved up to my neck and that she'd see me dead if necessary.
She'd see you dead if necessary?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Fulmer. No further questions.
No questions, Your Honor.
I recall Rita Sue Bliss. Now, Miss Bliss, when you left the stand, you were talking about your relationship with Mr. Thompson. But I would like you to talk about your relationship with people in Alabama. To refresh your recollection, I brought the front page of the May 3rd, 1974 edition of the Gladsville, Alabama Times. You've been to Gladsville, haven't you, Miss Bliss?
I don't believe I have.
There's an article here about a young couple who robbed a liquor store, murdered the elderly owner, and subsequently fled across the state line. The man was identified as Bobby Lee Gilman, the young woman as one Rita Sue Grubb, Charlene Grubb. Gilman was apprehended. Charlene Grubb is still at large. Bailiff, will you please take this paper and show it to Miss Bliss? Rita Sue Bliss and Charlene Grubb are one and the same, aren't they? Both of them, you. Charlene Grubb killed a man in Alabama. Rita Sue Bliss killed Brad Thompson right here. Killed him and put the blame on someone else. Rita Sue Bliss, you took Chris Fulmer's hotel passkey and planted phony evidence in Miss Robertson's room and in her purse. You used that same key to ransack Bradley Thompson's room and later to get into Rebecca Austin's room and steal a manuscript. A manuscript you were afraid would tell the world that you were Charlene Grubb. A manuscript you thought would send you back to Alabama to stand trial for murder. Rita Sue Bliss. As a writer, you have a great way with words. I wish you could have written about the look on your own face when you finally read Brad Thompson's autobiography and realized that you had killed a man for no reason at all.
For no reason at all. Oh, there were reasons. Thousands of them. I only wish I could have killed him 1,000 times. All of you. He swallowed and devoured you, you gutless wonders. Why didn't you finish him off? You just waited for me to do it. Well, now it's done. All done. Isn't it?
Yes. It's done. Your Honor, I move for a dismissal of all charges against the defendant.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
So ordered. I instruct the bailiffs to take Mr. Fulmer and Miss Bliss into immediate custody.
Your Honor, if it's all right, I would like 5 minutes with Mr. Fulmer.
Of course, bailiff. Stand by. This court is now adjourned.
Miss Bliss, come with me,
See you back at the lodge. Ken, Mrs. Joyce is in the corridor. I'll take care of that. Chris, Judy, this is Mrs. Mitchell Joyce. She's been wanting to talk to you.
Mr. Fulmer? Miss Fulmer? My husband Mitchell was Jack Blaisdell's business partner. And 3 years ago, he discovered that Jack had swindled him out of several $1 million. In a blind rage, he went to Jack's house and he found him there with your mother. My husband shot both of them to death. I begged him to go to the police, but he refused. And then when Mr. Mason got Angela Blaisdell acquitted, I'm afraid I just couldn't turn him in. But my husband died 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to the police with the whole story. I know what my silence cost you. And I can only hope that you find it in your heart to forgive me.
Miss, you did a very fine thing in coming back here. Ken and I want you to know that we'll be glad to represent you against whatever charges they file.
But Chris didn't really kill anybody. Rita Sue did.
That's right. She would have found a way to murder Brad Thompson, whether your brother was there or not. But Chris could have stepped in, could have prevented it.
Don't blame them. They're right. I knew when I decided to come back that it would probably end like this. But it was the only way. Mr. Mason?
Mr. Fulmer?